I get so many questions about homeschool, what our routine looks like, what curriculum we use, how we teach, so I decided to do a video about it. Here's a sample schedule that we use right now. And so I have the days of the week across the top. And then over on the left, I have all of the subjects that we try to incorporate. So if you look at this, this semester, and our schedule varies depending on what I have going on, because I also teach part-time outside of the house. So I have to kind of rearrange what subjects we do on which days, depending on my teaching schedule from semester to semester. So typically what we do is language arts and math and Bible are every day. So those are the core subjects, I feel, and so I make sure that we do those every single day. I incorporate history and science on our days that are more open, and so this semester that happens to be Monday and Wednesday, so those are the days we hit all of the subjects pretty much. So Bible, language arts, math, history, and science are on Mondays and Wednesdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays are when my classes occur. I teach Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday this semester. So Tuesdays and Thursdays we're pretty busy out of the house. So those are just Bible, language arts, and math. And then Friday we will hit any electives. And electives for the girls at their age, which kindergarten, 3rd, and 5th grade, electives are, I try to keep those unstructured. Quinn has been into knitting and crocheting lately, and she's been watching a bunch of YouTube videos and teaching herself how to do that. So I'm considering that one of her electives. In the past, she's done foreign language. She was and still is into learning Spanish. And so she taught herself some Spanish. We have a subscription to Rosetta Stone. And then she also uses the Duolingo website. Our middle daughter, she likes to draw. So I use drawing as one of her electives. And I let their electives be guided by their interests rather than pick them for them at this age. So as they get older, I'm sure their electives will be a little more structured, but right now that's what they look like in our homeschool. We typically will go, and you'll notice, Monday through Thursday. Those are our school days. Fridays are, aside from, again, the interest-driven electives, those are pretty much a non-school day. So going 4 days a week, that equals out to 45 weeks a year. Our state requires that we teach an equivalent education for 180 days, which is what the public schools do. So anyway, 4 days a week will be 45 weeks out of the school year, and that fits into our schedule. We pretty much do a year-round schooling. We take off the month of July for our summer break, and then we take off the month of December for our Christmas break, and then we start our new school year in January. So we're pretty much kind of a calendar year beginning as far as leveling up to the next grade. And it's pretty much a year-round school. So anyway, 4 days a week, we like that. That's very flexible. The structure fits into our life and our family, and it kind of allows us some freedom. So if we don't get to something Monday through Thursday, we do have Friday where we can do school, and we've done that lots of times. So if there are appointments or something comes up, maybe a last-minute field trip that's on one of our heavy school days, then we can move that school day to Friday, and it gives us a little bit of wiggle room in our schedule. Frequently asked questions. What do people ask me about homeschooling most often? First and foremost, they want to know what our schedule is like. So I showed you our weekly schedule of subjects and how we divide those up throughout our days, but our daily schedule is pretty normal. I wake up before the girls usually so I can drink my coffee and exercise and just have a moment of peace. And then once they get up, I make them breakfast. I get myself ready while they're eating, and I shoot for 9 a.m. to be our start time for school. And some days we start at 9, some days we don't. Today, for instance, we started closer to 11, and that's just how it happens. So once we get started, as close to 9 as possible, then we will devote 10 minutes to Bible. And I try to divide the core subjects up as evenly as possible, because I know with my kids, I have about 30 minutes per subject where I have their attention. And any more than 30 minutes, they kind of get antsy and fidgety, and I lose that concentration that I've gotten the first 30 minutes. So for language arts and math and history, 30 minutes is our time block each for those. So we're sitting at an hour and a half. And then on the days we do science, then that's an additional 30 minutes. So we're looking at 2 hours. And then we have, I call them filler activities. So it'll be things like when I'm trying to work with one and another one is done with something, and I don't want them to just sit there and do nothing. So I'll have them do a filler activity. And so that might be to read from one of their readers that comes with our curriculum, like a grade level reader. Grade level readers have short stories, poems, nonfiction, just all sorts of different, like a variety of reading material in them. So they'll read from their readers as a filler. They will maybe do handwriting out of their handwriting workbook, or maybe spelling practice their words that they've been working on that week. They have these challenging words flashcards, so I'll have them do that as a filler activity, or do math flashcards to practice their math facts. And essentially a filler activity is just something that they can do independent while I'm working with somebody else. So that works really well for us, and they don't mind the filler activities. It's a nice break between subjects. And so that brings our daily total time usually right around 3 hours, start to finish. Again, it depends on the day. Some days it's less than 3 hours. Some days it's more than 3 hours. Some days they want to come back and finish something that we didn't finish. So I let them do that. So 3 hours is kind of our average daily time for school. And if you look at a public school classroom, they're in school for 6 or 7 hours a day. Most of that time is spent transitioning. So transitioning between subjects, transitioning between activities, transitioning to things. So when I'm able to sit with just my 3 girls at the table, we can do school in 3 hours, and they have thoroughly been given a lesson and thoroughly learned some material that we present that day. So another frequently asked question is about curriculum. People always want to know what we teach. What do you teach? How do you teach it? Where do you get it? And as far as curriculum goes, there are so many options out there. There are, hundreds, maybe even thousands of options for homeschool curriculum out there. It just depends on what you're looking for and what you want from it. So when we first started, went with a company called My Father's World, and I love My Father's World. They're great. We used that company for 4 years until 2019. Actually, until 2020, we just switched. And this year, with all 3 girls, we're using a curriculum from a company called The Good and the Beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with our old curriculum. We just needed a change. And I began seeing that my girls weren't getting certain things from language arts and history that I thought they should be getting. And so it just wasn't their learning style. The curriculum didn't fit how they learn best. And so I looked around and I researched and kind of found this company, and I really liked how they presented, especially language arts. Being an English teacher myself, I have in my mind how I think that I should approach it with them. And so I really, really liked The Good and the Beautiful and the way that they serve that language arts up to the kids. They combine not only English, but geography, spelling. We just did some floor plans today, so I mean architecture, I don't know. They just combine a bunch of stuff into one, and it's really nice. Also, with this new company, the girls, they don't necessarily go by grade level. You just take an assessment test, and that's the level that you use for that year. And so both the girls tested into the same level, which is nice because I don't have to individualize. We can kind of do language arts all at once, and it's kind of helped condense our day a little bit, which is another reason why I also loved this new company. So with The Good and the Beautiful this year, we're doing language arts. Our youngest is doing math, and the only reason the other two aren't doing math with this company is because they don't yet have that level of math written, so it's not available. We're doing history with The Good and the Beautiful, science, and then handwriting. So I'm currently waiting on our science and our handwriting curriculum to arrive in the mail, but once that gets here, then we'll start using it. As far as math for the older two, we are using it's called Math Lessons for a Living Education. And our girls are very literature based, and they like to read and they like stories, and that's how this math is presented. You have kind of a story that you follow throughout the progression of each level. And it's the same two kids, and they talk about these math concepts, and then you practice those math concepts in the lesson. And so that's worked really well for our older two. So we're gonna continue with that for them. And then our Bible curriculum, I just found this year, My Father's World, which is what we previously were using, incorporated Bible into the curriculum. And The Good and the Beautiful, while it is a Christian curriculum, they don't incorporate Bible as much as My Father's World did. So I started looking for an outside Bible source that I could use as that portion of our day. And I found two books that I'm so excited about. They're called More Than Words. And it's I can't wait. It's just going to be good for my 8 and my 10-year-old to dive into the Word and who they are in Christ through these lessons. And I'm just excited for them in that respect. So that's our curriculum. That's what we're using this year. I would show you, but I think there's probably like, I don't know, some sort of copyright issue with the company, and I don't want to get in trouble for like showing that stuff. So you'll just have to take my word for it or go to their website. It's very, very awesome curriculum. Next question, why did we start homeschooling? Well, it's a funny story. So I was an education major in college, and I was a high school English teacher for years and years. And when I was in college, I did a research paper my senior year on homeschooling, and my education professor was, I think, kind of horrified that I was like advocating homeschooling, but I never really considered that it was something that I would do with my own family. I just liked the idea. It didn't offend me in any way. I thought, oh, okay, educate your kids at home, cool. So when we had kids and our oldest was 3, my husband started asking and kind of bringing up what we were gonna do as far as her education. And at the time we lived in a neighboring city and I taught for that corporation, and I knew that I didn't necessarily want her to go to the elementary school that we lived in district for. So we were considering sending her to the town that we now live in for elementary school. And the more we talked about it, we just really couldn't come to a decision. Neither of us had peace about it. And so one day he just brought it up and said, what do you think about homeschooling? And at first I was like, nah, that's not us. I don't think so. And then the more I thought about it and the more I prayed about it, it felt right. And we had the biggest sense of peace about the whole thing. And so I started, researching it and looking into it, and we just eventually, it just felt right, and we felt called to do this with our family. I will say homeschooling, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's very individualized, and it's very specific to your family your lifestyle and the dynamic that's in your house. I would never tell anybody that homeschooling is the only way to do it, because you're gonna do a disservice to your kids if you're not called and you don't have this piece and you're not passionate about it. So it's definitely not it's just not right for everybody. It's not a one size fits all approach. So I have no ambivalence towards those of you who send your kids to public school. It's just, that wasn't for us, so. So what do you have to do to homeschool? Well, this varies state to state. So if homeschooling is something you're interested in, my first suggestion is always to go to the Homeschooling Legal Defense Association website. The abbreviation is HSLDA. And they have a state-by-state listing of homeschool requirements. And so legally, you need to look into what your state requires and know that before you make a decision whether or not you're gonna do it. Our state it's a very homeschooling friendly state. And our requirements are that we teach an equivalent education in English, because that's the primary language in the United States, and that we teach 180 days of school. So that's easy to do, and again, we live in a very homeschooling friendly state. So, but it varies from state to state. I know some states you have to have submit a portfolio, or your kids have to take standardized tests. It just varies. So in order to homeschool, you need to look into your state laws regarding it before you make a decision. Personally, after you have ironed out what you have to do legally, the first thing I always tell people to do is to research, go to the library, go to websites, find books, read blogs, talk to other homeschool parents, join state homeschool groups on Facebook, go to your state or a neighboring state's homeschool convention. They're not necessarily state specific, they're more like region specific. And then join the HSLDA or go to their website to at least read up on what it takes to homeschool, who can do it. Spoiler alert, anybody can do it. And just find out what you need to do to start the journey if you're interested. One thing I will say about what you need to do to homeschool is you don't have to be formally educated. You do not have to be a educated teacher to homeschool. You know your child best. And I always use the story that when I was teaching high school students and I had to call home for grade reasons or behavior reasons or anything, I always made it a point to tell the parent that I needed their help because they know their child best. I'm just the teacher. I just see your student for 48 minutes a day, but you know your child best. And so I kind of still adhere to that philosophy when it comes to homeschooling. A lot of people say I could never homeschool, I'm just not a teacher. And you don't have to be a teacher to homeschool. You have to know your kids and you have to love your kids. And you kind of have to want to be with your kids because you never get away from them. I left the best for last because this is the doozy and this is the question that gets under all homeschoolers' skin. And it's the big S. What about socialization? It's a non-issue. In 2020, socialization in homeschooling is a complete non-issue. We, in particular, live in a very homeschool-friendly area. Like, the county that we live in has a ginormous homeschooling population. So it's not hard to find some sort of homeschool-specific activity. And in fact, you'd have to work harder not to find something to do with other homeschoolers than you actually do just finding a group to connect with. So there are so many homeschooling-specific activities that you can do. I know, in our area, we have homeschool gym classes, homeschool math and science classes. There are, an endless option of homeschool art classes. There are co-ops. There are skating groups. Anything you could think of and imagine, there's a homeschool group for it, or there is a class for it, at least in my area. So our girls in particular are involved in homeschool gym. We do that once a week. They do a drama club here in our town. They go to choir, they're in a children's choir. They are involved in church activities, and we go to small group and they're involved in that with kids from our church. They have friends from other homeschool families. So, I know that's shocking, but that homeschool kids would have homeschool friends, but they do. And so the point is that we aren't locked up in a closet during the day, only like associating with each other. So we're pretty active. In fact, I would say that I'm busier now as a homeschooling mom who also works part-time than I ever dreamed of being when I taught full-time and was here with my kids in the evening. So some days I don't know whether I'm coming or going. And as far as socialization goes, I think that I've noticed that my kids they're learning to interact with a much more diverse group of people and age ranges because of homeschooling, because they're not around a group of 30 kids their age all day long. They're around people literally across the spectrum of ages daily. So they're learning to interact and communicate with a plethora of people. And I've noticed that's one benefit of homeschooling for us. So as far as socialization goes, again, non-issue. Like, don't come at me with that argument. So I think that pretty much covers it. If you have any other questions about homeschooling, leave it in the comments. I love to talk homeschooling. I love to answer questions. I love to hear what other people, their experiences with it, good or bad. Sometimes I have people that have had terrible experiences and we're able to talk about it, and hopefully they leave our conversation viewing homeschooling in a more positive light than maybe they personally experienced it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you have enjoyed seeing what a day in our homeschool schedule looks like and what it means for our family. And if I can help you in any way, if you have questions about homeschooling, if you're curious, if you just need direction or information, please reach out and I would love to help guide you along the way. Thanks for watching.